A big win deserves a big episode of Chalk Talk, and we're back here on campus with the head coach of the LaSalle Explorers, Brett Gordon, and it's brought to you by the class of 1998 12th Man Club. Brett, I know those guys were out in full force on Saturday when you guys took down St. Joe's Prep. Maybe you could talk to us a little bit about those individuals that have supported you and supported what we're doing here, as well as the LaSalle community as a whole.
Sure. I mean, a lot of what LaSalle is all about is the camaraderie and the network and the relationships and the family atmosphere. So to go on the run that we have over the last few weeks and to have the open lines of communications with so many familiar faces, friends, alumni, is really what this is all about. Certainly saw a lot of familiar faces out there on Saturday. A lot of people I haven't seen in a while that were out to support not only this team, but the school and alumni base has really been a lot of fun for me personally. I know for our players, and hopefully we can give them a few more weeks to come out and watch us continue to play.
This was the game that everyone looked forward to. Even the first game against St. Joe's Prep was a great win. Going back to week 0, week 1, whatever you'd like to call it, against Pittsburgh Central Catholic. The Malvern game is always a huge event, but we knew from the very beginning of the calendar that your postseason fate would be determined by this game. So now that the game has come and gone, what are your main takeaways?
To your point, we knew for a long time now that the season ultimately, regardless of how it shook out to this point, it was going to come down to this playoff game in the first round every year. So to have played the game, to come through it the way we did, I really just can't say enough about how proud I am of the players, proud of our coaching staff. For the kids to handle it the way they did, let's call it what it was. There was a lot of angst and pressure around this game for a lot of reasons when the buildup has been so big. I thought the kids handled their business very professionally. They had a certain purpose to them last week, unlike anything I've ever seen leading up to the game, and then certainly the day before and the day of. They handled their business. They did it with class, did it with a lot of confidence, played a very clean game in a lot of ways in all 3 phases. And their composure during the game, and then really the celebration afterward, but then also the message quickly turning to the job's not finished and we got a lot more to accomplish, to me as the head coach was very exciting to watch.
I hear that a lot. What you said about how locked in the guys were and a level of focus and preparation like you hadn't seen before. I feel like your the Last Dance documentary, things of that nature. After the fact, they talk about how before the game it was at that level. Why do you think that is? And could you give us an example of what the change between maybe a focus group before and the weeks prior versus what was that next level of focus this week? What does that look like?
Yeah, for me, I think it was an overall mentality that the team adopted, probably from some of the confidence they built earlier in the year, that not only do we want to do this, we feel more than capable that we are going to go out and do this. So when you hear me mention the word like a different level of purpose that we had going into the game, there was a seriousness and a mindset that we're going to get this done regardless of what it takes to come out with a victory. So I think the kids really believed first and foremost that going into the game that they were the better team. They practiced as such for the week leading into it. And I don't know if that was really the case last year. I think we certainly had a lot of success and a lot of things we were proud of, but I don't know if our guys truly believed going into the second one that we were the better team. I think there was still a feeling of we need some things to go our way in order to win this one. That wasn't the case this year, and I think they proved to themselves based on the schedule that we played, some of the opponents that we had played. I think we learned a ton from the loss to Roman Catholic at one point during this season. How they recovered from there, which was the first prep game, was the first game after that. To me, that was a big telltale sign that we have a mature group and we had a group that winning was going to be very important to. And then I think we got our act together over the last 3 to 4 weeks, and then you could kind of sense and feel the buildup coming to last Saturday. And it was actually probably one of the calmer games I was, at least emotionally inside. from the standpoint. I thought the kids were ready. Sometimes you can always be surprised when it comes to high school kids, but I had a weird sense of calm before the game because what I had seen leading up to it.
And when we think about this year's group and some of the individual contributors, Joey O'Brien getting the game-sealing interception in the final seconds, it's wild, I think, to me and others, that that's actually his first interception because of the fact that he puts himself in such good position so often. He's got skills, talents, and an anticipation that really no one else does. And he's impacted the game in so many ways defensively. For him to bring it down and end the game that way, what's that mean?
Well, Joey's such a special person, first and foremost. He's had some opportunities this year to come down with interceptions. He'll be the first to sit there and tell you that he should have had potentially 5 or 6 to this point. To see it happen for him the way it did, the way it ended, to kind of seal the game was special. But going back to what I said about the special type of person Joey is, Joey and I talked at length leading into the game around his need to be patient. None of us were surprised that the game plan going in when we were on offense was going to be to try to keep as many eyes and hands on him across the field as possible, which they did. And Joey's maturity and Joey's selflessness, he knew that in certain cases he was going to have to be a decoy in certain areas to clear out areas for some of his teammates to come through and make plays. And for me, the proudest I was of when you go back and watch the game of all of the plays, all of the touchdowns, all the crucial first downs over the course of the game, even the ones where Joey wasn't the one catching the pass on the end. He was the first person down there to celebrate with whoever it was, Owen or JP or Gavin, and then on the defensive side of the ball with his teammates as well. So Joey's special in a lot of different ways, and I'm hopeful that hopefully that interception at the end of the game breaks the seal, and that's a sign of things to come.
The other guys that did get involved, you mentioned a couple of them, JP Oates, Owen Johnson. Let's talk about Owen Johnson and the game that young man had. We've had conversations off air about how talented he is and just how folks are going to figure that out sooner rather than later. I think the secret's out about Owen Johnson.
Owen's a tremendous talent. He's still very young, but he has a maturity to him when it comes to his confidence level on the field. And I said this in an interview last week, I forget who it was with, that for as talented as he is, he has a humility to him, but when he sets on the field, he knows not only that he belongs, but he has an opportunity to change the game. So our plan all along, all season, was candidly to be as balanced as we can. And when I say balanced, I mean distribution of touches across the team, knowing that as the season progresses and hopefully we could get into some November and December football, the more balanced we can be as far as the weapons that we have, the more challenge it's going to be for teams to figure out what's their strategy and how to defend us. So we weren't surprised how the prep came out and played us. Some of it we kind of anticipated and knew that if for us to be successful, we were going to have a couple other guys step up. Owen was certainly one of those people. JP was another. So they're making us very well-rounded on the offensive side of the ball when it comes to defensive coaches trying to figure out, what's the best way to combat LaSalle's offense.
You mentioned JP. Let's talk about him. Offensively, another great game. Defensively, gets a hand on the ball that leads to the interception. Another Colton McAleer big play against St. Joe's Prep, by the way. JP Oates playing defensively, no doubt a wild card for you. Maybe you could speak a little bit to him. And then Colton coming up with the interception on limited action.
Our plan all along was at some point to introduce JP on the defensive side of the ball. Some of that was forced due to some injury situations we had at the linebacker position. Colton, you mentioned, he hasn't played hardly at all this year due to the shoulder. He has had a few really big moments, and we're hoping we can continue to get him healthy because we're going to need him 100% down the stretch as far as being out on the field. But we knew that JP, he just needed a little more time on the defensive side of the ball. As we started to introduce him, it was really leading into the week of Judge. So the idea was, let's get him some reps, not just at pass rusher when the game's on the line, but there's an opportunity due to some injury situations to get him more as like a full-time edge guy, linebacker type. So we had a good week of practice leading into Judge. Played him there to get him some real game experience. He made some plays in that game. And then our plan has been, as we move forward, he's going to continue to be a part of certainly not only what we do on the offensive side of the ball, but defensively. Colton comes up with, again, a great play. JP bats the ball up. Colton's where he always is, which is in the perfect position defensively to make the interception. And then really for me, the bigger story across the whole team, as far as you look at the end of that game, is how many different people really contributed at various times of the game with big plays in all three phases. Ryan Fandozzi played a great game. Jamel Williams had his moment. Trey Hopkins had his moment. Lucas Johnson comes up with a huge hit. Chima Auguste, the new guy for us, makes two big plays in that game with a kickoff return. And there's other guys I could mention. I could go on, but it was truly a testament to this group as an overall team as to how many people contributed to the outcome in that game.
You mentioned Ryan Fandozzi. Maybe the play of the game in certain ways. Third and behind the sticks. Owen was hurt. There were a couple other guys that were down. Jimmy went down early in the game. Was it even JP potentially at the same time? And so Fandozzi comes in kind of a halfback, fullback type position and runs out into the flat. Gavin evades a free rusher, which we'll talk about him using his legs in a minute. But Fandozzi able to catch the ball in the flat, get to the sticks, convert when you guys desperately needed it.
What's interesting about the Ryan Fandozzi play is Ryan's never ran that play being in an offensive practice situation all year. So to your point, I was getting a little bit frustrated on the sidelines over the headset simply because we had guys dropping like flies. We were down at one point 4 starters at the skill positions. So I was trying to rack my brain around who's available, what does anybody even know as far as what formation to call. So I literally called our most basic pass play that we haven't really run since training camp, just hoping to run something basic. And I told Gavin, I said, just tell Ryan what to do. So Ryan's standing next to Gavin. He says, what do I do? He says, just release out into the left flat and be ready for the ball. Gavin made a great athletic play, and St. Joe's turned him loose in the flat. Because not only did he have to catch the ball, he had to then get another 7-8 yards from where he caught the ball to get a first down. So right place, right time, and a senior making a major contribution at a much needed time in the game.
And what led to that was free rusher. Gavin spins out of that. He used his legs maybe as effectively as I can remember in his time in a LaSalle uniform. You've told me right offhand that that's always in there for Gavin. He doesn't always go to it. Why was this the game?
We talk about it all the time, and especially last offseason into this season with all of our players, but Gavin in particular, trying to figure out what areas do we need to improve and where can we be better, not just for this year, but for his future. And one of the things we've always talked about is great quarterbacks at every level figure out a way to get 2 to 3 first downs a game with their feet. Never too late, I guess, in the sense of it took till this game. But we talked about last week, knowing that it was reasonable to think they could potentially drop 8 guys with our passing game and how the previous game went. That was one of the things we figured they would do. And then the discussion was, hey, if they do that, you got to be aware if the edges collapse to get out. And even if it's 2-3 yards here and there, just to keep them honest. And I don't know how many times it was throughout the course of the game, but I think it was at least 4, maybe 5, where he got out on the edge. And it could have been a couple more that he ended up throwing the ball anyway. But Gavin's a very underrated athlete. He's traditionally known as being a pocket passer, which he certainly is. But he's very athletic. So to see him do that and to see him come up huge and use his legs at a time where we really needed him to based on how the defense was playing, it was certainly a much needed aspect of the game that he stepped up and delivered for us.
There wasn't a ton that went wrong for you guys offensively. There were a few times you went under center where maybe that didn't go as smoothly as I'm sure you'd like. You've said it before, football is not a game of perfect. And so what I came away very impressed with when there is a fumble down at the goal line late in the first half, that your defense steps up effectively 3 plays, no total yards. St. Joe's Prep then punts from that same 1 yard line where you initially fumbled it. You get the ball back in great field position and you score before the half. I have to imagine as a head coach and a lot of your assistants were proud of the way your guys handled that situation.
They did, and we talk about resiliency and maturity and how far this team has come. That's a great example of that's about as bad of adversity as you're going to face. We're about to go in and score to go up, hopefully 14-7. We had a mishap down on the goal line. You know, the wind's kind of taken out of your sails on the sideline, and then here we are. Our defense comes right back out on the field, gets a quick stop. We get a short field. We go in and score as if really nothing happened going in at halftime. So when you really look at the game as a whole, and as I look at the last probably 5 or 6 weeks, how the season's played out, our defense has come a long way. They've really settled in, under Coach French and the staff, and have gotten really comfortable and are playing really, really sound football across the board. Came up with some really key stops. And outside of 1 or 2 plays where, Charlie got out of the pocket, which he does really well, and made some plays, we really kept their offense under wraps for pretty much the whole game.
You did. You absolutely did. You controlled both sides of the football, I thought. And the other piece of it, there's a third angle of the game, isn't there? Special teams. And there were 2 consecutive, I don't know if you want to call them special teams mishaps for St. Joe's Prep. The first one, I would say definitely. The second one, you guys put a lot of pressure on them. A 4th and 4, about 5 minutes left in the game. You're running guys on and off the field, which forces St. Joe's Prep to quickly run guys off the field, and they get called for an offside. First down for you guys. Then the next set of downs, about 4 minutes left, you throw Gavin Sidwar back. You know he can punt the football, and you call a fake, effectively ending the game, taking another 2.5 minutes off the clock. How much does that mean to you that LaSalle owns the special teams side of things in a game as important as that one?
But as we prepared for the week, and you're trying, in my shoes, trying to assess what's their team like compared to what we have in all 3 phases, and trying to figure out any way of creating either a competitive advantage or neutralizing an area that you might think they're better. They have done such a great job for years and years of owning special teams against all their opponents. When you look at last year's game, the playoff game, they start the game with a huge kick return, which kind of set the tone of the game. That one wasn't as bad as, if you remember back, after we scored to tie the game last year, they had a kick return that went to the 45-yard line. Next play, they scored to go back up 14-7. So special teams from a momentum standpoint, especially in high school football, is huge. So the first thing I decided when talking with the staff earlier last week, we are going to maximize our opportunity in special teams. And that started with our kickoff team. If you looked at who was out there, it was the who's who of LaSalle football on our kickoff team, and wanted to make sure that was very apparent to the players that we were not going to come up short in the special teams phase, knowing that was one area that they could argue they had us, had an upper hand, so to speak, when it came to the matchup. Then on top of that, the next piece was, how do we actually create a competitive advantage for ourselves? And we've used Gavin to punt before. He actually punts the ball very well. And on Wednesday morning into the afternoon hours, was kind of sitting around, and Mark Schmidt and I were in the office and started thinking, okay, how can we take this punt scenario with Gavin to the next level and do it in such a way that, puts a lot of demands on the special teams, not only to execute, but for them to identify it real time. And I figured worst case, we'll get a timeout out of it. So to get first off the penalty, which gave us a first down, and all that was they were lined up in the neutral zone when you go back and look at the film. And then the second time was essentially we had 2-3 options off the same play, basically saying however they line up, we're going to do X, Y, or Z, almost to the point where they really can't be right. And Gavin was coached up on what to look for specifically when we had that called, and executed it to perfection, pretty much ending the game. So there was that was exciting. That was pretty cool to watch, to see us really end the game in that fashion. and kind of watch at the same time, the air just kind of came out of the building on the other sideline after that play.
You're the best to do it at the quarterback position here at LaSalle. Gavin certainly entering that territory. Best to do it at Villanova University. And so the chance to coach at your alma mater here at LaSalle and to coach in that building where you set all those records. Let's talk about you personally. I know you don't like to do a ton of that. You direct the focus to the kids in the program. But that is really unique, Brett.
It was. My son Luke, who's a sophomore in the program, quarterback here, we kind of have this tradition now that we have a catch, when we go out on the field pre-game before all the festivities start. And I actually had said to him driving over to school that morning, I said, hey, bud, I know we got a game today, but, when you're out there warming up today, you're going to be the fourth generation of Gordon to throw a football on this field that we're going to go play on. So it was certainly in the back of my mind for a lot of the week leading up to. I didn't know how the emotions would be. Driving over there was certainly a lot of nostalgic memories in my brain pulling on campus and, figuring out which parking spot we were going to be in. And then just really tried to focus on the game. Once the celebration kind of kicked in afterwards, made sure we got some pictures that we can remember from. And then after everything had kind of settled down and as I got in my car in the stadium to head home, I was by myself. So I had a good, 4 or 5 minutes just to be alone and really soak it all in with the stadium in the background. And, it was a pretty special moment to think how everything has kind of come full circle. The LaSalle piece of this, and then having that type of win on Villanova's campus, which was so near and dear to so many generations of my family. I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a pretty special day.
Well, I'm glad that was special for you. Speaking for a lot of LaSalle fans, a lot of folks are really, really happy that you're here and really happy that you're getting this experience and providing the experience for the young men. So you deserve that moment as well.
I appreciate it. It's been almost 2 years, and everything that we've asked from the kids to this point, the kids have delivered on it. And from my standpoint, to see the euphoria on their faces on the field after a game like that, and I told them this is why I decided to come back and coach, to be a part of moments like that and to see these kids reach their full potential. So I think the bye is coming at a really important part, given all the energy and effort and work that went into winning last week. And now the focus already as of yesterday has now moved to the next phase of this, which is, potentially hoping have a number of games coming up and making sure that all the things we preach all the time about continuing to improve and focus on our process instead of outcomes, that is what the focus has now shifted to pretty quickly.
Well, we will catch up more on that as you prepare for your opponent. To be determined at this point, Lincoln or Imhotep on Saturday, November 15th, 3 o'clock at Northeast High School. Certainly we're hopeful to be there and continue to support you guys as you go through your run. But have a great week of practice, and thank you for taking the time to do this.
Great. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.